The animation shows the basic layout of the space frame. The outside of the space frame is triangulated on all facets. The only part which is not fully triangulated is underneath the engine, and even then there's a diagonal that runs from the far corner of the space frame. All loads are fed into nodes which are supported by a chassis member in 3 dimensions. That means that all chassis members are either in compression or in tension, with one small exception that I'll show in the wooden mock-up. We have a wooden mock-up of the space frame cut up from old tomato stakes. The front subframe is a heavily triangulated and triangular prism section, and thus should be immensely strong to carry the suspension loads and also help the rigidity of the overall frame. Most of the load of the front suspension comes through the lower front wishbone arm, and although brackets have to be made, you can see that everything is coming back to a 3-dimensional node. The torsion beam, torsion tube, is part of the chassis lower runner. It's also mounted with the tube to the outside so that I can put a tool in there and rotate the torsion arm and thus change the spring rate by pushing the torsion springs in and out, and also rotate them to increase or decrease the preload on the front suspension. There's only one spot on the frame that doesn't go cleanly back into a corner or cleanly back into a node, and that's this diagonal runner which goes to the back and is, just for reasons of geometry, set inboard a little bit. However, this is one of the strongest parts of the vehicle in bending. It will eventually have the safety cage mounting plate, the safety cage, the harness mount bar, and the strut buckets all fixed into that point, which probably makes this the most solid corner in bending on the entire vehicle. The advantage of a mock-up is it allows me to test the ergonomics, something you can't really do in a CAD model. So can I sit in the seat? Can I flail my arms about? Does everything actually fit together, particularly the curved and organic shapes? For example, there's a very tight area in a space that wants to be occupied by the bell crank, the steering rack, which in this case is indicated by the white rod, and the dampers, which are lying down. Everything has probably got about 25 to 50 mils juggling room, so it should all fit quite nicely. Good news is that the engine fits, and even better, the standard exhaust system can be bolted in without fouling the frame, to the extent that the standard exhaust headers come out through the frame at the back and allow fitting of the stock muffler. The whole frame is about 70 mils above the ground. That means that the headers which tuck under the engine have about 40 mils clearance. I'll see if that is a problem in practice. I hope not. I can always put a custom exhaust in. Here you can get an indication of how the rear suspension mounts, with the radius arm running forward and pushing longitudinally on the lower space frame member. In fact, it will be fitted slightly lower than this because it mounts lower on the hub and will be mounted in sideways. The diff will have a subframe carrying out to the main frame, to the tub. and the rear frame and diff carrier will have the inboard suspension mounts as roughly indicated here. So there we have it. It's kind of a voila in wood.